Killer of Killers dropped in 2025 as animated anthology. Vikings, feudal Japan ninjas, World War II fighter pilots, all getting hunted by Yautja across completely different eras. On the surface, it looked like a fun standalone collection of short films, the kind of thing you watch once and move on from. But then it pulls a fourth segment that ties all three stories together, and suddenly you realize the whole thing was building towards something way bigger than anyone expected. The survivors from each era end up transported to the Yautja homeworld, Yautja Prime, and most of them manage to escape except for one. A Viking warrior named Ursa gets left behind, and the predators put her in suspended animation. The camera then pulls back to reveal an enormous warehouse packed with similar chambers, each one holding a different alien species. The message is clear. These are all beings who killed a predator and got preserved as trophies. And then, tucked in among them, there's one more chamber. Inside it is Naru, the protagonist of Prey, frozen in stasis on an alien planet, removed from everything and everyone she ever knew. That reveal recontextualizes Prey's entire ending in about 5 seconds flat. And to make it worse, since John Torres, the American pilot from the World War II segment, confirms we're operating somewhere in the 1940s timeline, Naru has been in that chamber for at minimum 200 years, possibly significantly longer depending on when exactly she was taken. She won a fight against one of the most dangerous hunters in the galaxy, earned the respect of her entire tribe, rose to become war chief, and then got quietly abducted off-screen and reduced to a display piece on another planet. That's genuinely dark for a franchise that usually ends its stories with the human walking away victorious. Now, to really understand why this hits so hard, you have to go back to 2022 and what Prey actually accomplished, because the Predator franchise was in rough shape before that film came out. The 2018 reboot directed by Shane Black had some defenders, but broadly speaking, it left most fans cold, and it felt like the series had run out of ideas. Then Dan Trachtenberg, who had already proven himself with 10 Cloverfield Lane, took the whole thing and stripped it down to something almost uncomfortably simple. One Comanche warrior named Naru in 1719, one predator, one survival story. No military squad, no government conspiracy, no callback cameos designed to generate applause. Just a young woman trying to prove herself to a tribe that keeps underestimating her, and an alien hunter that sees her as worthy prey. What made Prey resonate, and I've thought about this a lot, wasn't the premise itself, though the historical setting was genuinely fresh. It was the commitment to Naru's interiority. You understand her motivation deeply. She wants to be recognized as a hunter by her community, and the film takes that personal struggle seriously rather than using it as a surface-level character beat. Amber Midthunder gave a genuinely great performance that carried the emotional weight the script needed. By the time Naru actually defeats the predator using its own targeting system against it, the payoff works because the film spent its entire runtime building toward that specific kind of problem-solving intelligence. It wasn't luck, it was earned. The film also ended on what felt like a promise. The final shot before the credits showed multiple Yautja ships descending toward the Comanche settlement. Everyone, and I mean everyone, read that as setup for a sequel about Naru defending her people against a full-scale alien invasion. It made complete narrative sense. She'd just proven herself against one hunter. Now what happens when an entire fleet shows up? You could imagine a story that expanded the cultural specificity of Prey, dug deeper into Comanche traditions and tactics, and scaled up the conflict while keeping the same character-driven focus. That seemed like the natural and logical next step. Killer of Killers just blew that assumption up completely. What looked like a hopeful tease, her people standing their ground as ships arrived, was actually foreshadowing of the worst possible outcome. The predators came, and at some point between that ending and whatever followed, they took Naru. Whether she fought back, whether she tried to protect her tribe, whether she was taken first or last, none of that is shown. She's just gone, frozen, waiting in a warehouse alongside creatures from across the galaxy who also had the misfortune of being too good at killing things that predators hold sacred. There's an interesting theory floating around the fandom about what this means thematically. The Yautja honor code is built around the hunt. The worthiest prey is the one that can fight back, but there's apparently a tier above being worthy prey, which is being a killer of their own kind. Naru didn't just survive, she killed one of them using their own weapon. In Yautja culture, that might not just be impressive, it might make you something to be preserved rather than consumed. The trophy chamber isn't just a prison, it might be the highest honor the predators know how to give, which makes it even more unsettling because they're completely indifferent to whether their trophies are alive. or dead. This also creates a very different problem for any potential Prey 2. The sequel that fans were mentally writing, a ground-level defense of Comanche territory, Naru leading a resistance, the historical setting getting even richer. That film is no longer on the table in any obvious way. Instead, the setup points towards something closer in spirit to Predators from 2010, where Adrian Brody and a group of warriors woke up on an alien hunting ground with no memory of how they got there. An alien prison break with warriors from across history sounds entertaining on paper, and there's genuinely interesting material in the idea of Naru working alongside a Viking and a World War II pilot. But it loses the thing that made Prey special in the first place, which was that exquisite historical specificity. The 1719 Great Plains setting wasn't just a backdrop, it was the entire soul of the film. Trachtenberg has been pretty candid about where his head is at creatively, even if he's deliberately vague about specifics. He told Screen Rant that after completing Badlands, which does something genuinely wild by centering the story on a Yautja protagonist for the first time in the franchise, he already had 3 more concepts ready to pitch. He wrapped Badlands just a few months before the interview and admitted he'd love to dive into that 3rd idea. At the same time, he was clear that he doesn't want to stay locked inside this franchise forever, even though he's clearly having a great time making exactly the kinds of films he always wanted to make within this universe. The Paramount deal adds another layer to all of this. Trachtenberg recently signed an exclusive agreement with the studio that gives Paramount first consideration rights on his future projects. The way he framed it publicly, it's not a constraint. It's actually an opportunity to keep developing Predator material alongside original work. He talked about looking for what hasn't been told yet, both within the franchise's mythology and in science fiction more broadly. He's thinking about new entry points, stories that could feel as fresh as Prey did in 2022. That creative ambition is exactly why the franchise is in the best shape it's been in decades. And honestly, Trachtenberg has basically become the James Gunn equivalent for this universe. Disney handed him creative oversight of the entire Predator timeline and mythology, and he's used that authority to prove that these stories work best when they're intimate and character-driven rather than spectacle-driven. The through line connecting Prey, Killer of Killers, and Badlands is that none of them are trying to be the biggest action movie of the year. They're all trying to be the most interesting version of a Predator story set in a specific place and time. Medieval Japan works, Viking Scandinavia works, a Comanche warrior in 1719 works. The setting is almost irrelevant. What matters is that you have a compelling protagonist and a genuine commitment to that world's specificity. Trachtenberg basically proved that the Predator is the most versatile monster in Hollywood's catalog right now. Now here's where it gets genuinely complicated. Prey 2 was officially confirmed in early 2024, with strong indications that Amber Midthunder would be returning, but the details have stayed deliberately murky, and Trachtenberg's coyness in interviews suggests the actual story has evolved significantly from whatever was originally announced. Some fans think that his unnamed 3rd pitch is Prey 2, and that the alien planet setup from Killer of Killers is actually feeding directly into where that sequel is headed. Others think there might be a version of Prey 2 that ignores the Killer of Killers reveal entirely and focuses on that Yautja invasion of the Comanche settlement. Franchises have retconned animated spin-offs before. There's also the Arnold Schwarzenegger element. The final chamber reveal in Killer of Killers doesn't just show Naru, it apparently also includes Dutch, Schwarzenegger's character from the original 1987 film, which is both amazing and slightly absurd when you think about it too hard. Dutch survived his encounter with the Predator in the jungle, and apparently at some point after that he was taken and added to the trophy collection. Whether Schwarzenegger is involved in the animation or it's just a visual Easter egg is unclear, but the implication is that he's a candidate to appear in future projects. Practically speaking, bringing him back as a full-action protagonist at his current age doesn't make a lot of sense for live action, but animation solves that problem entirely. A brief appearance as the grizzled survivor who's been frozen the longest, giving context to the chamber from the inside, could work really well without derailing anything. The franchise's trajectory since Prey has been remarkable by any measure. 2 years ago, there were genuine conversations about whether the Predator name had any commercial viability left. Now, there are multiple projects in active development with a unified creative vision behind all of them. A protagonist in Naru who has become the most emotionally resonant human character in the franchise's history, and a mythology that's actually expanding in interesting directions rather than just recycling the same jungle hunt template. Prey wasn't just a good movie, it was proof that you can resurrect even the most exhausted franchise if you find the right angle and commit to it completely. My personal read on where this should go, and this is just speculation based on what Trachtenberg has shown he values, is that a Prey sequel needs to preserve the intimacy and personal stakes above everything else. The biggest creative risk in following up Killer of Killers is letting the scope balloon. The alien prison break concept has obvious entertainment value, but if it becomes an ensemble action piece spread across a dozen characters from different eras, you lose the thing that made Naru's story work in the first place. The best version of that sequel keeps her as the clear protagonist, uses the other warriors as supporting characters rather than co-leads, and finds a way to make the alien environment feel as specific and lived in as the 1719 Plains setting felt in Prey. That's a hard creative challenge, but Trachtenberg has already proven he can pull off things that looked impossible on paper. What's undeniable at this point is that Naru represents something the Predator franchise has genuinely never had before, a human lead compelling enough to carry a multi-film arc. Every previous Predator protagonist was essentially a one-and-done action hero defined by physical prowess and military competence. Naru is defined by intelligence, adaptability, and a deeply personal journey towards self-definition. Bringing her back doesn't just give the sequel a familiar face, it gives the franchise something that feels like a genuine continuing story rather than another disconnected installment, and that, more than any specific plot detail or mythology reveal, is why the next few years of Predator movies are worth paying close attention to.